Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, optimize, implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Rick Yvanovich. Hi, Rick.
Hi, Adi.
It's great to have you on this podcast.
Thanks for having me, Adi.
Yes. So, Rick, we'll start with your bio first. So you are a CEO, CFO, author, speaker, and seasoned entrepreneur with over 40 years of experience across industries from tech to oil and gas. It's definitely a wide range.
Yeah.
Now, after 35 years in Vietnam, Rick, now you split your time between Switzerland and Vietnam, and we're going to talk about Vietnam. We're going to talk about Switzerland, and you're originally from, you're English from United Kingdom. Yeah, and challenging. So you're challenging your expertise to drive transformation, purpose, and growth. So, we had a great, lively conversation just before the podcast. I'm sure we're going to carry it into the podcast. Tell us, England, Vietnam, Switzerland. Explain us the world traveling and how did you end up from one country to another?
Good question. England, well, after I was born, we emigrated to England.
From where?
Philippines.
Okay. So you were born in the Philippines.
I was born in the Philippines.
Are your parents from the Philippines?
My mother's from the Philippines. My father's from Macau.
Okay.
So I was raised in the UK, and I was there up until 1990. And then the company I was working for at the time, which was an oil exploration company, sent me to China briefly. I was in China, but I'll skip the China because on one of the trips I was going to and fro doing some forensic accounting. I'm a bean counter, by the way. I'm an accountant. And on one of the trips, they said, could I stop by in Saigon and Ho Chi Minh City on my way back? And I go, yeah, sure. And I didn't realize that I was going down there basically for an interview, even though literally on the same trip or the trip before, the earlier in the month, I had agreed to take on the finance manager role in China. And they said, no, forget that. You're coming here to Vietnam. So I was dragged screaming to Vietnam back in 1990. And 35 years later, I literally only left there, moved my home away from there last year.
In Switzerland, what brought you to Switzerland?
Well, I'm given with all that experience, I'm not a young person anymore. I am a baby boomer, which gives away my age. And it came to that time that the kids, gone to university and they've left home. They're not going to come back home to Vietnam anymore. So I guess we have to decide where we want to be. And there are only two choices, the UK, because I'm a Brit, or Switzerland, because my wife is Swiss. Wasn't much of a decision.
Well, okay. Okay, so now you spend your time, it's a lot on the planes between Vietnam and Switzerland. So with all of that, I'm just curious, what's your favorite cuisine?
Ooh, favorite cuisine? That's a tricky one.
Because we have
Where,
sweet, I mean, all of them are so amazing. I mean, you have the,
yeah.
how do you
So my
choose?
most favorite one
Yeah,
is obviously Indian.
right, of course.
Okay, I love Indian food. I love the
Me too.
spices. I love Asian food. Again, Thai food. I like the spiciness. I like the chilies. Having been in Vietnam, I do love Vietnamese food. But having been in Vietnam, I do eat Vietnamese food in Vietnam as opposed to Vietnamese food outside Vietnam.
That makes
So
sense. I just had to
it's a
ask
lot
you
of
because
seafood.
it's so different. I go like, okay, so
Mm.
what's your, okay, good. Well, now, okay, so we got it out of the way. I got my curiosity. So let's tell us now about your business journey. So you are a founder, an author, a speaker. You would transform. You are a serial entrepreneur. Give us a little bit more. So you went to an interview in Vietnam. So you're working for another company. When did you start your entrepreneurial journey?
I don't know. When I went to Vietnam, it was the same company because it's a global oil company. It's one of the oil majors. And they just moved from Vietnam, well, from London to China to Vietnam. Back in 1994, after I had done many things with them, upstream, downstream, and all other things that you do in energy, they said it's time to go back to head office, which is London. So that was 1994. I was only, what, 32 at the time, so I'm still young. Um, and the oil price, for those old enough to remember, was only $15, $15 a barrel. And it was still going south of that. Now, I had been in Vietnam for 4 years at that time, and my bosses in London had changed literally every year. So I didn't actually know my current boss. So there was a massive risk, like 99.9%, or might as well call it 100%, that if I got on the plane, went to London and got off and walked into the office, I wouldn't have a job. Okay. And at 32, to be that overpaid expat in the exciting Vietnam, which was still emerging, um, I found out that they had a voluntary redundancy program. So I did the most obvious thing. I retired. But I'm a workaholic, and that lasted about 5 seconds. So I started working again. I've always been a systems accountant, as in I'm with computer systems on the accounting side. And I had accidentally already implemented it in multiple oil majors in the country. Because what else does one do in an emerging country when there's nothing to do? So my friends used to ask me, and my friends being CFOs of the international oil majors, how do you do your accounting, Rick? And I used to hold up, oh, I use this software program. Says, do you know anything about it? Says, yeah, sure, I know how to implement it. I've done it in Vietnam, I've done it in China. I'll do it for you if you had it. And then magically, after some months, they managed to get these discs. And so over a few beers over the weekend, that's what I do. So the vendor found out that I was leaving, but staying in Vietnam, and they said, why don't you become a distributor? So that was in 94. 31 years later, my company is still doing the same thing.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. How did it evolve throughout the years?
Um, I have to admit, I'm an accountant. I am a numbers person, and I understand accounting and technology at the time. Although, early 90s compared to today, you can say, well, that's pretty simplistic technology, right? um, I didn't know anything else, about. I never called it entrepreneurialism. I didn't know how to sell. I didn't know how to market. I don't understand people. I don't understand any of that. But what do I understand is I understand accounting, and I understand the problems that, my friends that I had accidentally helped. So when I left, I said, hey, I'm doing this independently. Do you need any help? And of course, a lot of them turned around and says, yeah, sure, we'll help you. And they gave me some business. And then it came across the first oil company. They contacted me and they said, hey, you've been doing this. Can you do it for us? I said, sure. And so I did it for them. And I started learning, all right, how do I write a contract? Okay. And how do I support them after I've done that? So I had to learn all of that. And then I did one, and then I did another, and then I did another. And then the word got round. And the convenient thing is about oil exploration back in the day then is that, you know, typically on the accounting side and for others, you'd enter a country, you'd spend maybe 2 or 3 years there, and then you'd move on. So my friends from Vietnam started moving. So I started getting phone calls from all around the world. Hey, Rick, it's Joe or Jim or whoever it was. Can you come and do that all over again? Sure, you know, I'll jump in a plane and go do it all over again. So I did it all over again.
And
And they told more
at
people.
what point, I mean, this is a great story and a great example of, you know, you take your skill and you find a niche and you go and you work, you basically exchange your skill, expertise, time for money, and you get paid. Okay, I'm working for myself now. At what point did you realize you have a company and you have to scale?
Well, I understand companies because I understand tax and I understand tax structures. Okay. Because I'd already been working overseas in China and in Vietnam. And, you know, I've been working with international structures. So in order for me to exist outside the UK and within Southeast Asia, I had to put myself into a tax structure. So I built myself a tax structure of a multi-layered company. That to me seemed like obvious. But I'm an accountant, it's what I do, and I've been doing it for other people accidentally anyway, because if somebody asked, I just do it and help them.
Right.
What's the problem? So to me, it seemed like common sense and general knowledge, except I keep forgetting, actually, I know how to do this, and maybe I'm an expert in this because other people don't know how to do it, but it just didn't cross my mind. So I just did it. So I'd already put it into a company because that's more tax efficient anyway. And
No, but I'm talking
yeah,
about the scalability, getting others to work for you, you know,
yeah.
expanding the company. At
Okay,
what
so
point?
one is the legal structure. And then it came to the point that when should I start hiring people?
Right.
Because I need to hire people. And I got to the stage that I can't do everything. And there was enough work coming in that I needed to hire and train other people. So it's not just me doing it, it's someone else doing it. So the volume of work coming in was greater than my capacity to deliver it. So I had to turn around and say no to prospects. And I didn't like that because we're basically saying no to that revenue. So I started hiring people. I hired one and then another and then another and then another. And yeah, we got bigger.
Amazing. Amazing. Of course, with growth, there is also the challenges and building companies. You know, we are all about systems, and I know you love systems. You told me you have hundreds of SOPs. Rick, what's the importance of systems in growing your business?
On reflection, the importance is that you could say that before having any systems, there aren't any, and the systems are in our head, and therefore it's word of mouth. Okay, so if I hire one person and I have the time available, I can teach them everything. But if I'm teaching them that and spending time passing this knowledge across, there's an economic cost to that. I'm not doing all these other things. Okay. And which it didn't really, it took a while for me to actually, for it to click. It's not when you hire one person, it's when you hire many people. but not at the same time. Oh, great. I just hired this person last month and I spent most of last month training them. And now I know I've got to hire another person. I've got to do it again. How am I going to do that? And then a few months later, having done that, I've got to hire another person. So maybe I'm a bit slow, but it gets like, I can't keep doing that. It's a terrible model. It's a terrible ROI. Again, I'm a numbers person. If I'm spending my time on that, is there a good return? There's got to be a better way. And to ask the person I just trained to train the next person, that doesn't make any sense because they don't have enough expertise in it yet. So this is where I have to start documenting what we're doing, because it's easier to onboard people if we already have a written process. Admittedly, I only saw that it was really a lack of documented process that became an obstacle when we got to a certain size. So when we were 5 or 10 people, it didn't matter too much because there was already some hierarchy and some delegation there. And not everybody was hired on the same day. That there was already people who knew what to do and they could pass it on, and it became their problem on their time to pass it on. But when we went through the 20 people barrier, the 30, the 40, the 50, the 100 and more, it became obvious to a blind person that unless you have absolutely everything documented, you are going to waste incredible time trying to pass on knowledge. And then I found after some years, when I reflect back over the decades, I can see, especially now, how much organizational knowledge can be lost if you fail to document.
That's right. That's right. So
Okay.
give an example of a story where you saw that happening, where organizational knowledge was lost because it wasn't documented, or even when you salvaged one because it was documented.
Yeah, let me give you some random examples of different scenarios, things that maybe are more fresh in my mind from this year. I had an instance recently where there was some involuntary turnover. So somebody resigned. We weren't planning for them to resign. We thought they were a good employee. We wished to retain them, but they made their decision and left. And, through the exit interviews and finding out what are the underlying reasons, one of them was a lack of clarity. Okay. So they're a person within a team, and that team's within a bigger department. So there are multiple levels of hierarchy in there. And there was a lack of alignment, from top all the way down to the incumbent. There was conflict as well. In another case, there was conflict between the immediate manager and the manager's manager. Okay, so for the person down here, like, which direction am I supposed to go? And this one's saying go left, and the other one's saying go right. Doesn't matter what I'm going to do, I'm going to be wrong. And if they don't have the mindset to challenge that and to seek clarity, they just go with the flow and get pulled in different directions. And at some point in time, they said, I've had enough of this, I'm going. And when I look at that, is that a people problem or is it a process problem? And when I say that, again, for clarity, because we are talking systems here, it's a people problem if we have a process and it's not being followed.
Right. That's actually a very good point, because I always say, is it a people problem or a process problem? And sometimes it's both, because you can have and sometimes it can be a process problem that people didn't follow the process. You have to figure out why, because they didn't want to, or because maybe the process is obsolete, not complete, incorrect, etc.
I always give the people the benefit of the doubt, and I say it's a process problem.
Me too.
Otherwise, we're pointing the finger.
Right.
To point it at a piece of paper, oh, the process is wrong. That's fine, because that isn't necessarily on maybe the manager who's just messed something up.
You're
Okay.
absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yes.
It's a process. So like, what's wrong with the process? What's missing? So in some cases, it's known that there's something missing in the process, but no one's taken action to do anything.
Right.
Or there is a process. Here's a worse one. There is a process, and we wrote it 30 years ago. It's a little bit out of date, but no one is challenging it. You know, why are we doing it this way? Because that's the way we always do it. You know, oh, come on.
Yes,
this is
exactly.
not how it's supposed to be. So I always push it down to the process. Okay. Now, another aspect of this whole system or documentation thing is if you don't have your systems, your processes documented, it means that the knowledge that you have within the organization of doing stuff is not written down. It's in people's heads. And if they walk out the door, you've lost it forever. So that's one problem. The other problem is at some point in time, if you're going to sell the company, what is the buyer buying? Is it buying the people or is it buying the processes? It's actually buying both. But
I want to say it's both, because you can, if you have the processes, you have the right people, but if the people leave, then it's not a problem because you can supplement it.
But if you don't have the process, all you've got are the people, and there's no guarantee that they're going to stay if ownership changes.
That's exactly right. And that's problematic.
So to me and other people I've spent, and I speak to some of my friends who are in M&A, and we've been approached many times over the years to be acquired. I can see very, very clearly to have things well documented pushes up the value of the organization versus if they are poorly or not documented at all.
Right. Now you're a numbers person. So what would you estimate is the increase in value of a business because there are documented processes?
It depends on the business, but it can be, I think it's at the low end. It can probably double the value. At the high end, it can maybe go up to a 10x multiple.
I think so too. Yeah, that's what I've seen.
Because it's if you look at it from from a numbers point of view, you're buying something and you're saying, all right, it's valued this way. You look at the balance sheet and everything else and how it's progressing and what they're doing. And yet the numbers say it's valued at this. But if nothing is documented, that's a massive red flag. It's a risk. Yeah. So unless the people stay and carry on doing what they're doing, and we don't know what they're doing if we're acquiring them necessarily, we're buying something that could fall apart very, very quickly. So to mitigate that risk, things do need to be documented.
That's exactly right.
Now, another way of looking at it is, okay, documentation is one way of capturing organizational knowledge so it can be easily passed on. Another perspective is if we want to improve a process, it's better to say, well, here's a document or here's a flow chart of what the process is. Now I'll take out my red pen and I'm going to tear it to pieces and improve it. That's far faster and easier than let's take out a blank piece of paper and work out what to do. Because we don't even know where we are to start off.
Right? I mean, that's the way I look at it. It's like an X-ray. So it's like, imagine a doctor standing in front of the X-ray and say, okay, this is broken. This needs to be fixed. This is okay. Just leave it be. Or here's what we can do. It gives you somewhere to start because, and Rick, I'm sure that's because you've been so successful and seen so many companies. There are a lot of things that are right with companies that are successful or got to a certain point. You don't, and sometimes we feel frustrated and we want to tear everything apart, but that is not really the right thing to do either. You want to see where things are at and then figure out how to improve and what to improve.
I mean, look at it another way. I mean, look at large companies, and one part of the story is like, they may moan and complain that there's so much compliance, they've got to be compliant with this, that, and the other. And they spend so much time just documenting things and checkboxing things and making sure, like, if you take things like cybersecurity, NIST, ISO 27001, GDPR, all of those kind of things. Some companies say that's for the large enterprise, very, very large companies. They've got armies of people to do that, and they do all of that, and it's beautifully documented. And yeah, they control risk because they identify, and it's all under control. Now, on the flip side, you might say go to an SME, and we say, well, you don't do that because it's so much paperwork, all those processes and things. Well, if you're not looking after those risks, you're not even looking for the risks, then you're just reacting to things when they're happening. And it may be good for you so far, nothing's gone wrong. But it's like you're flying without a dashboard. You've
That's
got
very
no
true.
controls.
Very true.
And just like if any of the listeners are company owners, yeah, you have your own dashboards. You look at things, you look at your metrics, your OKRs, or your accounts, or whatever they are. You look at all those things. Okay, but underlying that is still all the processes and the procedures to make those end results happen. All right. Without it documented, we're saying we're doing stuff and we're just hoping we get a good outcome because no one's documented how we're doing it. And guess what? In a period of growth, you can't pass on the message fast enough. And even on, if we look at, individual personal growth, or an organization trying to do that, L&D of our people and grow them, you can take an individual or some individuals and put them through some training, and they're not going to remember 100% of it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Maybe they remember 70%, and they've got to pass it on to someone else. And so it's gone down to 50%, and they go pass it down to someone else, and it goes down to nothing. It reminds me of a study that I believe that Microsoft did. This was decades ago, actually. And they did a survey of users of things like Excel and Word, all the Microsoft Office stuff, to ask the users, what's missing from the tools that we've given you. And they worked out that more than 50% of what people were asking for were already in the product.
They just didn't know how to use it.
Or they didn't know how to use it because they'd forgotten or they'd never been taught. Now, in my business, one of my businesses, we sell financial ERP accounting systems. And, sort of a joke is that every 3 to 5 years, a lot of companies change their accounting systems, especially the smaller ones. And that's because it takes them 3 to 5 years to lose all the knowledge they had about it. So it no longer does what it's supposed to do because nobody knows how to do it. So they throw it away and get something else.
Right.
But there was nothing wrong with what they had. They just forgot how to use it. Same as that, that Microsoft thing.
Absolutely.
So it goes back to, if it's documented, that's how we do it. It's easy to onboard people. It's easy to train people. And it's easy to differentiate, is it the process or it's the individual? Now, the important thing about processes is they're not static.
That's very true. They do change, and you have to be able to review and change. What are some of your best practices that you implemented with your companies when processes change? What are some of your best practices on that?
Okay, I actually do it from a different perspective, because the question is what do you do when the process change, which to me sounds like a reactive thing. Now, in some cases, it is reactive. There's a new law, or there's a change to a law, or a change to regulation. Okay, that causes us, that wasn't covered before.
It's also from a different, let me ask you again this in a little bit different angle, because let's say, for instance, I'll give an example, working with a client, and one of her clients brought something up that showed that the process was actually not as efficient as it could be to service that particular client, that she wanted to service more of that. So then we had to go back and revisit the process, re-look at what is working, what is not, and how we can augment it so we can actually also take this additional business. So it's not the reactivity, is also the being proactive, but something triggered it, right? So that could be, that caused us to think, oh, the process has to be changed. But on the other hand, you can also do regular process reviews when you actually have, like we have a list of questions that we ask to see if the process is still relevant.
Okay, so to answer your question differently, there are three ways.
Tell
or
me.
there are three mechanisms. The first mechanism we covered, it's something external. Somebody said something external to the company that shows that the process can be improved, and we improve it. It could be a legislative change, same thing. Okay, that's one of the three. The second one is for any process, is there's got to be a refreshed timeline on it. Okay, so it usually needs to be revisited a minimum of once a year, depending on the process.
Right.
Okay,
if
that's
it's a
the
new
second
process,
one.
I tell my clients, you might need to revisit every quarter until it's actually operational.
Absolutely. And the third one, which is the way that we do it, it's part of our core value. One of our core values, it's a personal core value. And since some of the companies are my companies, it's a company core value, is Kaizen. And Kaizen is that Japanese terminology, which is change for good. Some people might have read about it in the Toyota way. So one of them is constant process improvement, no matter how tiny, teeny it is. We reinterpret Kaizen and saying, yes, it's process improvement. So we should be looking at what we are doing day to day. And if we have an idea to make something better, suggest it, change the process, challenge the process, especially if that's the way we've always done it, challenge it. Okay. But the other interpretation that we take of Kaizen is lifelong learning. It's improvement of self. Okay.
Right.
So it's learn something new every day, make ourselves better every day. So that's what we're trying to, because there's no perfection. We're just, trying to keep up, trying to keep ahead, keep tinkering with things. So when it comes to processes, is there a better way? In the last few years, we now have generative AI. So most processes can be challenged. All right, if we brought AI in, what's it going to do to this process? Is there something very manual that we can eliminate by the use of AI? There must be. So I challenge people to find it and eliminate that manual process.
I agree. That's exactly right. And challenge, look, explore, so you can always be a better version. And I like the lifelong learning. That's one of my core values as well, in terms of like always improve, always be better, and always find new ways, or ways, doesn't have to be new. You can also observe what other people are doing, but better ways in order to improve. Absolutely. Okay, well, now I have a question. You are an author. Tell us about your book.
Ooh, this book, you mean?
That's right.
Business as Unusual, How to Thrive the New Renaissance. It was born during the COVID pandemic. Like, hey, when you're locked up and you can't go out, what else are you going to do? So I started writing, and the name really also came out of the pandemic because, during, at the time I was in lockdown in Vietnam, and still trying to keep in contact with the networks I was in, so business leaders, business networks. And I began to get really annoyed when people said, when this is over and we get back to business as usual. I thought, you're nuts. It's never going to go back to normal. It's now crazy. It's unusual. So that became the title of the book. And we saw that because we were in lockdown in Vietnam and then we weren't in lockdown. So we were lockdown, no lockdown. We can go out, we can't go out. We need permits to even walk out your front door. There are all sorts of crazy things happening. The country was closed, so you couldn't fly out. You could fly out, but you wouldn't be able to get back. And if you weren't in the country in the first place, you couldn't get in. And this went on for years. And even after the pandemic was officially over, things still remain to be unusual. So I got lucky with the title, shall I say.
So who should buy this book? Who should read this book? Who is this book for?
Okay, this book, I think, I wrote it for leaders, owners, which could be anyone. And it's for all those people who feel, you could call it stuck or lost or unsure how to move forward. Because it's like the goalposts got thrown away. Or the analogy that I use is prior to the pandemic, we commuted, however long we commuted, to the office. We got into our little cube and probably jumped on the little hamster wheel, because it pays the mortgage. And we accepted that for whatever reason. Then the pandemic came along and the commute disappeared because we were at home. And even though we can leave our homes and go back to the office, in some cases, the office is gone. The cube is gone, and we're not going to jump on that hamster wheel again because we realized we never liked it in the first place. And so it resulted in the great resignation, the great reshuffle, basically a voting with the feet that we don't like what we had. Hopefully by now, just some years after the pandemic, people have got more clarity, but my feeling is they still don't. There's still, unfortunately, some people lurching from one job to another, and they're still not satisfied. They don't really know what they're aiming for, and they don't have a playbook for it because there is no playbook. So what I put together here was a type of playbook, okay, on how to structure your life, what to focus on, and to give you some kind of playbook for you to follow to feel as if you've got some kind of guidance. That's what I'm trying to do.
Very good. Okay, so Rick, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way and how can they buy the book?
The easiest thing to do is go and Google my name, Rick Yvanovich, and you might say, wow, this guy's got some real good SEO because he's got first page ranking for literally everything. And that's because I'm the only person on the planet with this name. So it's a bit of a cheat, but I'll take the great SEO skills. So you can Google me and you'll find me. You'll find my website, rickyvanovich.com. And from there, you can find out quite a lot about me. And you can buy the book through there. It's available. I'm about to relaunch it again with a new edition in bigger format because I'm getting older and the original text, I was struggling to read it unless I changed my glasses. So I wanted it bigger format. It's also available now in another language. It's available in Vietnamese. It's available in bookshops in Vietnam. For those of us who are not fortunate enough to be in Vietnam, yes, you can buy it on Amazon. And we'll be launching in the next month or so dozens of other places where you can get it online. Also, if you want to find me on social media, literally every single social media, it's just my name.
Excellent. So I invite our listeners to do that. Check out the book. And Rick, it's been a pleasure having you on this podcast. Amazing conversation about processes, about systems, and hearing it from you firsthand experience always makes a difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Hattie. I really like to express my gratitude for letting you go on and on and on your podcast. It's been a fun conversation. I've enjoyed myself, but more importantly, I hope your listeners have enjoyed it as much as I have. And to all of you listening in, I really appreciate your time and attention. And I look forward to hearing from some of you. So please reach out and pepper me with questions. And maybe I can hear about some of your fantastic experiences and have some great discussions with you. So thanks again, Addie.
You're very welcome. All right, Rick, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.